Hello! After some long discussion, the HMIS Help Desk has decided to switch from the Data Completeness Report Card. We felt it would best serve providers to switch to the Data Quality Framework report instead. This report, if run monthly, will be able to better prepare your agency and its projects when it's time to submit APRs, CAPERs, and any other reporting necessary to maintain your funding. We will resume grade cards, and once our website is updated, we'll post them there, as well as send you your grade for each project your agency has. It will be your responsibility to pull the report and fix any errors. If you have any questions about errors, you can always reach out and ask us if you need any help. We would love to help you guys have better data. We ask that you be patient with us while we iron out the kinks. Please be aware that the grading process may change. For the grading right now, we will be treating each question group as a class, and the errors as a grade in said class. For example, with Q3 Universal Data Elements, each element is a, quote, grade in the class. If the relationship to the head of household has a 9% error rate and everything else is perfect, that would be a 91% in that data question set, giving you an A and giving you 4 points for that specific question set. Then we would assign the points to the rest of the question sets and give you your final grade per project. For the error rates, anywhere from 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 89 is a B, and so on and so forth. If you're a shelter, don't worry, we will still be adding that 25% to your shelter destinations. Here's how to find the report. Navigate to the Reports tab of the left side of the HMIS home screen and click that. Then, click on Data Quality Framework under the Provider Reports section. You will now see two areas. The first is Report Run History, which you can expand and collapse. The second is Report Options. Report Run History is where you can view the history of reports that you have ran. Just click the magnifying glass to review the specific report. Report Options is where you set up the report to run it. You will have the option to name and describe the report. If you don't do it, it just won't have a name and it's going to look like this in the history. To prepare the report to be ran, make sure the provider type is marked to Provider. For Provider, make sure you select the project you want to run the report on. In this case, we'll use the Coalition's ESG Rapid Rehousing Program. Whatever your EDA mode is set to will auto-populate here. Make sure you select this provider only. Mark the program date range for the dates you are looking for. We will run reports cumulatively starting January 1st, 2021 to February 1st, 2021, extending a month as we go along. For instance, the next report will run from January 1st, 2021 to March 1st, 2021. And finally, make sure to mark your entry-exit type. If the project gets funding from HUD, mark it as HUD. If the project gets funding from the VA, mark it as VA. If the project is a PATH program, mark PATH. If the project is a RI program, mark RI. Otherwise, you will check the basic box. Then, click Build Report. You will then see a report currently building in the Report Run History. Now, this may take some time depending on how many clients were served. But once it's ready, click the magnifying glass to view the most recent report. As we see here, there are errors in each one of these categories. This is so we can show you where to fix these. To see which client ID has the error that is pulling, click the number value under Error Count. It will show you both the client ID and the client name for each person who has that specific error. The first section we will look at is Data Quality, Personally Identifiable Information. The next is Universal Data Elements. After that, it's Income and Housing Data Quality. And finally, Chronic Homelessness. The first data set we will look at is the Personally Identifiable Information. As we see here, the Personally Identifiable Information section, or PIIs, is broken up into 6 different data elements: name, social security number, date of birth, race, ethnicity, and gender. 2 of these errors are able to be fixed on the client profile. The rest must be done through the client's entry. In this case, the name data quality element has a missing response. You must fill out both the name element and the name data quality element. If it is not marked as full name reported, an error will appear. The next error on the list is social security number. Since the full number is not entered in the corresponding full social security number reported is not marked, it will be an error. However, sometimes clients will not know their full Social Security number, and if that's the case, then it is what it is. HUD recognizes that, and there is some level of forgiveness within that data element. However, this should not stop you from getting the full number. The next error, date of birth, is fixed on the entry. If you fix it right here on the client profile page, the error will still remain since all reports pull from the entry and exit. For shelter users, please navigate to the Summary tab and then find the Entry Exits box. You will clean the errors through the entry. Please do not add entry exits here. Remember, when you utilize ShelterPoint, the entry is automatically created. So let's navigate to the Entry Exit tab and look at the project's entry we ran the report for. The very first thing we see is that a full date of birth is reported, but it's marked as partial or approximate. Let's say I have E with me right here, and I double check whether this is her actual birthday or not, and she tells me it is. Let's go and change the date of birth type, and the error will disappear. Luckily for us, the rest of this data set, race, ethnicity, and gender, are also resolved right here. These errors will only show if the value is missing. Let's talk to the client and fill these out. Okay, great. When you go back to look at the DQF report, now all of the errors for the PIIs are gone. Let's talk about the universal data elements next. This data set involves vet status, project start date, relationship to head of household, client location, and disabling condition. The first of these, veteran status, is the only other error fixed on the client profile page. You just need to mark it as a yes or a no. The second error, project start date, should always sit at 0. Consider this a freebie. As long as the client has an entry, that will always be 0. The next, relationship to head of household, is found at the Entry Exit tab, not the Household tab. Sometimes, a group of clients will split up and the relationship to head of household will not be fixed. Remember, there's always one self or head of household. Sometimes, clients join together and there are 2 heads of household, which is also wrong. In this case, as we see here on the project entry, Eve's relationship to head of household is marked as head of household's child, and Nico's is head of household spouse or partner, so no one is marked as the head of household. What likely happened in this case is when the case manager filled out Eve's profile, they may have forgotten to click out of the pick list before they scrolled, causing the data item below head of household to be selected. Now that that's fixed, we have the client location. As we see here, Eve is marked for WV 503, the KVC. We are in the balance of state, so unless your agency serves more than one COC, this should always read WV 508 BOS for the balance of state. Finally, the disabling condition. Whenever we get to a sub-assessment table like this one, we want 3 things. 1. The green check mark for HUD verification, which we have, so it's not that. 2. All of the answers filled out for the table. And it looks like we have that, so it must be number 3. Making sure what is in the table matches what the question asks up top. So this yes up here needs to be changed to a no. And again, when we run the DQF report, this section goes to 0, leaving us to do the income and housing data quality next. This data set involves destination, income at start, income at annual, and income at exit. The destination will be fixed on the exit. Errors will pop up if a client has a destination recorded as no exit interview completed, other, client doesn't know, client refused, and data not collected. Again, HUD recognizes that especially with outreach and emergency shelters, sometimes clients just up and leave. If that's the case, well, there's not really anything we can do about that, so we're going to have to record it as such. However, if the client re-enters and tells you where they stayed during that in-between period, you can go back and fix that exit destination. For income at start, we are again looking for the 3 things that any sub-assessment table should have. The green check mark, the answers in the table completed, and that those answers match the data element either above or below the sub-assessment table. Outside of that, the most common error is when a client has an old income source and is marked as never receiving that source. Let's take a look. As we see here, the client is registered as not receiving $500 a month between these 2 dates. which, when said aloud, that doesn't really sound right. If the client has ever received income, that receiving income column should read as yes to show that from this start date to this end date, the client was receiving this specific amount of money a month. So let's change it, and that error will go away. I would like to make a special note here, though, for those serving more than one COC, or if you have clients that have been previously served in another COC. Sometimes you will see a completely correct income table. And this even happens with old clients that have been in the system for years. If this happens, contact the help desk because it may be a visibility issue and the error may lie within those hidden values. The same goes for income at annual and exit. However, they're going to be fixed at two different locations. The annual assessment will, of course, be fixed at the annual assessment and the exit. Annual assessments are to be done once the client has stayed in the program for a year. You're allowed 30 days before and after that anniversary date to upload an annual assessment. So if the client's anniversary date is June 1st, you're allowed to upload an annual assessment anywhere from May 1st to July 1st. This is uploaded to the interims column. Make sure that you mark the type of review as annual assessment. Then you'll be able to make any changes if the client has any changes to their information. And then finally, we have that last data set, chronicity. The chronicity data set is made up of a few different data elements depending on the client's prior living situation. The first data element, regardless of the client's prior living situation, is the approximate date this episode of homelessness started. The next is the number of times the client's been homeless in the last 3 years, including this time. And then the final is the total number of months the client has been homeless in the last 3 years, including this month. On the project's entry, this chunk of red text right here is where chronicity is measured. This is how the system keeps track of what clients are chronically homeless for PSH eligibility requirements. As a result, it is super important that at every single entry into a project, you ask these questions about where they stayed the night prior to entry, or last night. So we don't accidentally make an eligible client ineligible, or even an ineligible client eligible, because then you get in trouble with HUD. This client's entry is dated for January 5th, 2021, and has a blank chronicity section, which is why she's pulling to the errors. From this, we can see that last night the client stayed in a place not meant for habitation and has been staying there for 90 days or more, but less than a year. The first data element we're missing is the approximate date this episode of homelessness started. We'll ask the client how long she's been staying in a place not meant for habitation. She says she's been staying on the street since mid-September of last year. We can now put in 9/15/20 since it's asking for an approximate date. If the client knows the exact date, though, please put that. Then we'll ask her to give us a backwards timeline of her homelessness history. You've been on the streets since mid-September. Where did you stay before that? She replies, with a friend for 3 months. And where'd you stay before that? In a shelter. How long were you there? I was there for 5 months. We'll then ask her where she stayed before that, and she says she was renting a unit and had been for 5 years. From this conversation, we can answer the rest of the blank data elements. We can tell the amount of time she's been homeless in the last 3 years. That number's 2. The current instance and the stay at the emergency shelter. Since she was stably housed for 5 years before the shelter, that stay surpasses the 3-year requirement of the question. We also know how many months she's been homeless out of the last 3 years as well. 5 at the shelter, plus September, October, November, December, and finally January, which is 10 months. Thank you so much for listening all the way through this video. Of course, I can't cover every single way an error pops up in the system. These are just the most common. So, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to email the help desk at hmishelp@wvceh.org with the client ID number and the error you're receiving. We'd be more than happy to walk you through what is wrong.